Welcome, Matti back again. Today I'm going to talk about 4 different categories of camping stoves or outdoor stoves. Stoves that you carry with you during hiking trips, canoe tours, kayak tours and so whatever. But first, let's roll the intro.
We are Stina and Matti. We run a lifestyle company in the north of Swedish Lapland. For living, we work as nature guides and dog mushers. This is our life, our dream and our home. You're welcome to follow us on the journey.
Today we're going to talk about 4 different categories of camping stoves. And we're going to look at what's good with them and what's bad with them, when I want to use them and when I don't want to use them. When I divide them in different categories, I divide them after what kind of fuel you use and how you're burning the fuel. The first category is an alcohol stove. This is the first stove I learned to use. It's very basic. You're burning the alcohol in this. You can put half speed or full speed. Now, before this video, I was looking into old stuff in my storage area and I find this. I have cleaned it a little bit. This is from my grandmother actually. She used it. I don't know where mine are. I have mine own also, but this is from my grandmother. I'm very happy to have it. I would say that this is the classic outdoor stove. And what I see on YouTube, people start using them again. For 1 week's hiking trip, you need approximately 1 liter alcohol for 1 to 2 person. And that's liquid. You bring the alcohol in a bottle like this. This is 0.3 liters. This is very easy because you know how much it is. You know if you're going out 3 days, you need this bottle. You know if you're going to out a week, you need 1 liter and you have your bottle and you can just fill it up with so much as you need for that specific trip you're going out on. Very simple. It's a little bit, in Sweden we call söligt. You know, you put the alcohol in here and you start it and then suddenly you have cooked already, it's finished, and you close it, switch it out like this. Be careful, it's hot. When you close it, there is a rubber thing here, so then you can tighten it. And if you don't tighten it enough, it will leaking. And if you tighten it very hard, you maybe can't take this off afterwards. So it's really stuck. So it's very much about empty this one, and you can't put it back like this. So it's not clean. You have this alcohol on your hands sometimes, and you have this, if you're not careful, it's leaking and it's coming out into your pot or wherever you store this. So that's the downside of it actually. And the oldest brand of this in Sweden is something called Trangia. And then you get a whole stove like this. You put the burner here, put this in here, and then you can put the pot and you use the frying pan as a cover. This kind of stove, you can use it in quite heavy wind without problem. When you pack it, you get the package like this. This is a smaller size. The big one is, the pots are 1.5 or 2 liters maybe. And this thing is more than 1 kilo, it's 1.2 kilo. So I would say this is quite heavy stuff to carry around. What you also can do with this alcohol stove is something like this, homemade. This is called Pepsi burner. It's made out of 2 Pepsi bottles. That's 7 grams. You make it like this. And this is a can from tuna fish or something. And you put this pie cover like this. And this is like 20 grams or 30 grams, I don't know. This is really nothing. But then you also need some kind of wind protection from something like this. But this is a really lightweight, ultra lightweight stuff. And you make it by yourself. This I can recommend for everybody to do if they want to have fun during the Friday evening or I don't know. So the positive side of the alcohol stove is that it's very, very simple. Another good side is that it don't stop working because it's small parts that's falling apart. Another good thing with it is when it's burning, it's really, really silent. It's no noise. Another downside of it is that when you burn alcohol, you usually get black pots like this. I don't care. I don't really care. You clean them and then they are fine. But a lot of people don't like this. You can use, there is ethanol, methanol, different kinds, some giving less and some giving more. Some people put a little bit water in the alcohol, but I wouldn't do that. People have made a lot of different things to try to avoid this black, but I just accept it, it's black. Another downside with it is that it's quite slow. It's not coffee like that. But you're outdoor hiking, you have holiday probably, or it's time to relax. So anyway, you're not in a hurry. The last downside is that I think the fuel is more heavy per person per week if you compare to other fuels. I'm not really 100% sure of that, but for me it seems like I need more alcohol than if I compare with other fuel. So that was everything about the alcohol stove and the Trangia stove and the homemade stove.
So there was two things I forgot to tell you about the alcohol stove. If you're cooking and suddenly you're out of fuel and you're not ready with the cooking and you want to refill it, you had to be super serious about that. Don't refilling it while it's still burning. Don't refill it while it's still burning. If you put a bottle with alcohol and put it in here and it's still burning, you will have the fire in the bottle. That's super serious stuff. Don't do that. The second thing about the alcohol burner is if you kick on it or if you flip it while it's burning, the alcohol goes out on the ground and it starts burning on the ground. This should not be flipped. If a gas stove flip, it's no problem, but this should not be flipped, especially not in the tent. That's a downside with alcohol stove. So back to the normal video.
If you want, leave a comment if you want me to show how to make this, for example, by yourself, then we can make a YouTube video about that. Or if you want a real review of this Trangia stoves, then we can make it. So the second category of the outdoor stove is the gas stove. They use different mix of isobutane, butane and propane gas. Different gas for different temperature. The stove itself is a little bit more high-tech than the alcohol stove we just looked at. You connect this to the gas tube and then you open it. Inside this tube there is this gas, but it's under pressure and that makes it to liquid. So it is liquid here, but when you release the pressure and release it through the tube here, it comes out like gas. And then, as you see here, the gas goes through here and get preheated a little bit, and it's different. Gas stoves have different kind of technique. This one is very, very effective. It's from Primus, a kind of spider. This is stable and very good. This is very effective because it's more than 3000 watt when you open it full speed usually. It's a little bit different from different stoves, of course. These gas tubes comes in different sizes and different models, and we use usually these two size, 230 gram size. But sometimes it's very handsome with the small one too. If you go travel with your gas stove, you had to check what kind of connection is it on your stove and what does it sell in the country where you travel to. So if you travel to Sweden and you have a Primus stove, then it's usually no problem. But if you take this Primus stove and travel over to another country, it could be more problem, of course. And then you can find adapters, or you just buy a stove that fit to what they have in the country. These stoves are really simple to use. You just put a match, or some actually have a zip lighter also, like this one. It have a lighter here. They are easy to use. Open the gas, start it, and then you cook. It's also very easy because you can adjust the speed of it. If you want really hot or not so hot, if you want to make pancakes, this is very, very handsome actually. The most simple gas stoves are just few hundred crowns, like 30 euro or something like that. And then of course they can be more and more expensive. Some of them looks like this, where you put the stove on the ground, gas tube a little bit beside. You also have this stoves that you put on the top of the gas tube. And when you put a pot on here, it's not super stable. This one is like 70 gram. This is called MSR Pocket Rocket. It's an old one. You find them newer and lighter, of course, and you find them in Titan. You find really, really light one. But this one is an old one. I have it for maybe 15 years. With the gas stove, you have also another kind of, this is also an MSR. The whole pad here is glowing. This one is good because it's fit to this pot with the heating system. So this is really quick for boiling water, but it's totally useless if you want to make pancakes. But for making hot water, it's super good. So if you go out and know that you only need hot water and you only need this dry food that you add hot water to, then it's good. But if you want to make coffee or something like that, then it's not your stove. And this one, you have the very famous brand Jetboil, or Primus have, Primus Solo. This is a very old Primus, and you attach it like this, and the gas tube is under, and it's a unit like this. So this is for heating up water, just heating up water, not really cooking food. This kind of stoves use less energy than something like this, of course. So if you do something with this kind of stove, you carry a more heavy stove than if you carry this one. But if you carry this one, you have to carry a little bit more gas. When you use gas stoves, you don't have the problem with black pots as we had with the alcohol stove. So when you use gas, it's very clean. I use it inside the tent, so that's really, really good. What is the good side of gas stove? One of the best side of this is that it's just easy to start it and close it. You just switch it on when you need it, and you switch it off when you don't need it. So you can really save fuel with a gas stove. Another good side with these stoves are that you can always find some cheap and light ones. And the third good side with them is that you can use them inside the tent, but you had to really look after so you have very good ventilation, or at least I do it, but always good ventilation. This is probably something I should say, don't try this at home, but I use them inside my tent, but I'm really, really careful. One very good side with this stove is that if you compare to the alcohol, where I need 1 liter for 1-2 person, it's 1 kilo fuel for 1-2 person. With this stove, I know I need one of these for me. And I think this is like 300 grams, something like that. So this is lighter if I compare to the alcohol stove that I use. But that's my experience. If you have experienced how much fuel you use if you compare the gas with alcohol, please leave a comment down here, because I think this is very different from person to person. One of the downside with this is it's really difficult to make a calculation how much fuel you need if you do a shorter tour. Is this tube brand new, or have you already opened it? If you have started using it, how much is it left? You had to wait one of this, so you know how much is the empty one and how much is a full one. And then you can make a calculation how much is the gas. And then you can say how much gas it's left. But that's not the whole truth, because in the beginning, when the tube is full, it's much higher pressure than in the end. So in the beginning you boil water faster than in the end. I think it's difficult to make a good calculation how much gas it is still in the tube. So that's one of the downside. Another downside is that this tube, you don't recycle it. You recycle the metal, of course, but you don't use the tube again as a tube. You throw it. That's a really downside, because that's not environmental friendly. Now my dogs start howling. I have the microphone here, so I don't know if you hear it. Let's drink some tea. We just feed the dogs, and after the food they always make a small concert. And now we're going to talk about category number 3. That category I will call pump stoves. These stoves have a tank, and then it is a pump. So you put pressure into the tank. You connect the burner like this. Some of the stoves are already connected. This stove is from MSR. I will make a review of this stove because this is the only of these multi-fuel stoves that I really like. The bottle is from Primus, but not the stove. Primus makes really good gas stoves, but when Primus, Optimus or wherever try to make these multi-fuel stoves, they break down, at least for me. But I will come back to that later in the autumn to talk about only this kind of stove, because this is the stove you should use during the winter. This is the king of the stoves during the winter, actually. Because this stove, when you make the pressure in here, you can do it even if it's cold. It don't lose in pressure. You just push a little bit more. It is high-tech. Of course, not super high-tech, but there is things you had to take care of. Things can loosen here, you see. And if that one fall off, you can't use the stove. And in here there is small things that you also had to look after, put grease and so on. So it's not the simple stove to use. Or it's not the simple stove to have. This stove called multi-fuel stoves because you can use kerosene, gasoline, alcohol, and some are also possible to connect with gas. Most of them you had to swap a small thing down here between different kind of fuels, but they are really good. So when you start this, if you use gasoline, you just open it and close it. Let some gasoline go out here. Start it with a match, preheat this thing, and then when it's hot you open it again and it starts with a very intensive flame. You should be really careful when you do this, especially if you do it inside the tent, that suddenly you have flames that's super high. So this is a risky moment if you do it inside. I prefer to use this back in old days on kerosene, but they put too much paraffin into the kerosene in Sweden. So the pipes here was stocked with paraffin, so they stopped working. So nowadays I only use gasoline. I'm not really comfortable with that because it is like having a bomb in the tent. Gasoline burns really fast, as you know. So you have to be extremely careful with that. The good side with this stove is that you can use it in cold climate. You just make harder pressure in the bottle and you can run it even if it's 40-50 degrees cold. This is what you're going to use when you go mountain tours in winter. Another good thing with this is that if you are a minimalist and you only want one stove all around the year, this is also a good stove. And this is a heavy model. You can find them more lightweight, and you can find them that you can use gas also during the summer. They are quite expensive, but they're good. Another good side is that you usually have very cheap fuel to them. It's not like the gas that's very expensive, and also alcohol is quite expensive in Sweden. The downside of it, definitely, it's not easy to start it. You need skills, you need to practice, you need to be careful. You had to do it all over again and again and again until you really can do it. Another downside is when you use gasoline, it's easy to get an accident that the gasoline come out and it start burning. That's a bad downside. Another downside with this is that it is liquid. You had to fill it up. On the other hand, it's easy because you know you need 1 liter for a week, or you know you need a half liter per week, and then you can just fill up what you need, or take a small bottle or big bottle, whatever you want. So that's both good and bad side with the liquid thing. I can't really tell you how much one person need of this during the winter tour, for example. Because in winter time you may be melting snow. I only use them in winter. I use several liters for each day when I'm out with my dog teams. But it could be that 1 liter for one person a week could be fine if you find water sometimes. Another downside, the stoves are usually a little bit more heavy than the gas stoves, usually, but you find lightweights also. Another downside is the price. It's quite expensive things if you compare to gas stoves or if you compare with cheap alcohol stoves. Let's talk about the last category. This is the newest kind of stove in my life. And I just got it. I know it has been around for a long time, but this is new for me. And this is nothing. I'm really impressed. I don't know if you know what it is. This is a wood gas stove. This is 100 gram and you find fuel for your stove in the nature. Isn't that amazing? You can make it by yourself with some cans or something like that. I will try to do that later also. You burn pine cones, you find some small branches on the ground, you burn it of course in this one. You just need to carry the stove. You don't need some oil product for this, and that's really, really good, I think. There is nothing with this stove that actually could break down. The firewood can be wet, but if you bring a small bag with some dry firewood, it's enough to start the stove. And then you find new firewood in nature, then you can start the fire and you keep burning moisture things afterwards. When you use this kind of stove with burning wood, the pot will be black, of course. So that's maybe a downside. If you like clean pots, then you should not go for a wood gas stove, of course, or wood stove. And then next question, should you take firewood in the nature and you find some small branches? It's no matter, I think. Mostly no matter. What you should think about is don't put this into the moss. Try to put it on a stone, try to put it on sand, or you can have some thin aluminium with you, because it's falling small glowing things into the ground and you don't want to start a forest fire. It's not super nice to be responsible for that. Be careful, let it really burn out, and then the last glow that's left in here, you really put water on it so you really know that it's not glowing anymore. That's easy to do it. One good side with the wood stove is that this one is environmental friendly. It is organic things that you're burning. It's not oil product. It's not gas in some kind of container that you had to throw away. Gas that's transported from probably China all over the planet. This is not environmental friendly. It's much more environmental friendly if you can find something in the nature that you burn. Another good side with this is that this stove is lightweight. It's super lightweight. And together with a small pot, you have the whole set super lightweight. One downside, you can't use it inside your tent because of this black smoke. You should not use it in the tent. I really don't recommend you to do that. Another downside with this is that if it's raining and you don't have skills to find firewood, then it's difficult. Immediately when you start learning how to find dry firewood, this is good even if it's raining. Because if you used to make fire outside, you know where to find it. It's easy for me to say actually, because I live in northern Sweden, up in Lapland, above Arctic Circle. And here we have a different kind of forest. We have different kind of trees. At least I always find dry firewood here, more or less. I know it's, if you live in a more moistury area, it's maybe more difficult. I don't really know. You will learn, and you can also have a small waterproof bag with some firewood in your backpack. It's still less weight than 1 kilo gasoline like this. What you also can do is that you make a Pepsi burner like this. If you don't find firewood, you use this. And this is 7 gram. You have alcohol, so you can use it for 2-3 days if you're out for a week hike. It's many different kind of wood gas stoves, and this is from a company called Toaks. I put a link to this down in the description so you can find it if you want. I put links to the stoves that I recommend. I don't put links to stoves I don't recommend because all these are not good. This is not a review of different stoves. Another downside with the wood stove is actually that it's slow. It's much slower than gas stove and it's much slower than pumped stoves, multi-fuel stoves. So it is slow, but you're out in the nature. It's probably the same speed as an alcohol stove, but otherwise it's quite slow. It is summer here. Now it's 1:30 in midnight and I'm sitting here outside my house recording a video. The sun is on the way up again and I can hear the loon on the lake behind me. The dogs start playing in the kennel because the temperature drops. I'm sipping my tea and now I'm going in and have a shower and go to bed. Have a good life. And don't forget to go outdoors and use your stuff. That was all from me today. And if you have any question about stoves or if you just want to leave a comment, that's really helpful for our channel actually if you comment on this video. It's also helpful if you give a thumb up or a thumb down or if you share this video in different Facebook groups, and it's also helpful if you subscribe if you like this channel. It's time to sleep for me. See you next time. Ciao!